Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi taala wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera. Thank you so much to the organizing committee from ICDAIM who allow us to present this paper. So I'm Dr. Siti Suriani Othman. We are going to present a paper that has been written by a group of researchers from USIM and also UNISPA, Masjid Islam Bandung. So this is actually part of our matching grant on radicalism among university students in Malaysia. So I'm going to share some PowerPoints so that I can continue with my presentation, and also it will help you to be clearer as well with our presentation. So inshallah, the title of our presentation today is Radicalism and Extremism Among University Students in Malaysia. And we will focus in two universities, University Sains Islam Malaysia and also University Islam Antarabangsa, IIUM. So the group of researchers we have in this matching grant is myself, Dr. Marina Munira, second writer, Dr. Kartini Kamarzaman, Ponsevarani, and the team from UNISPA are Dr. Anna Ratnasari, Dr. Ferry Darmawan, and also Dr. Oji Kurniawan. So this is my email, surani@usim.edu.my. Should you have any questions or any suggestions for this paper, kindly email me. Thank you. So what this paper is about, this paper tries to explore radicalism and extremism among students in the local universities, where we have interviewed some lecturers. In total, we have 6 samples who teach Islamic courses in Malaysia, and we focus at the moment in 2 universities, namely USIM, University Sains Islam Malaysia, and IIUM, International Islamic University of Malaysia. So basically, this paper tries to research the status, how much or how dangerous radicalism and extremism can be in the context of Malaysian students, specifically in these 2 universities, because literature has shown that basically the activities of radicalism and extremism in Malaysia, whether in school or higher learning institutions, have actually increased. So specifically in Malaysia, students such as those from public and private universities are seen as easy targets to engage in radicalism and extremism, and this information comes from the ministry. So what is also worrying is that terrorists and extremists have been exploiting higher learning institutions as sources for recruitment and support. I think this probably due to the naivety of the students, where they are so also fragile as well. And the minds are easily influenced and exploited. So arguably, there are vulnerables, these students are vulnerable to any socio-political ideas, including extreme ideologies, and are easily persuaded and indoctrinated with extreme ideologies as well. So scholars like Ahmad al-Muhammadi, for example, argued that the presence of one extremist in a campus is sufficient reason for authorities to take preventive measures. Since the beginning of the operation to curb extremism in 2013 in Malaysia, 40 students from schools and higher learning institutions have been arrested due to terrorism-related charges. Malaysian police, for example, have also arrested more than 160 people who have suspected involved with Daesh in 2016. Evidence shows that Daesh has targeted Malaysian youth, specifically those in higher learning institutions. In the eyes of extremists, students are seen as as a strategic target for recruitment and to build support, as they have the potential to become leaders who can influence others. So basically, based on this, we tried to study the role of educators and any teaching methods and in educational institutions to really see and understand, do we have any specific methods of teaching and learning in class to reduce this influence of radicalism and extremism, for example. So based on literature, we found that through collective roles, actually educators and educational institutions may incorporate peace studies in teaching. This can be one of the suggestions that we have found. And also, classroom education should also consider developing a syllabus or university curriculum that covers relevant topics and issues on preventing radicalism and extremism. So to study this, we have actually tried to interview six respondents who are lecturers who teach Islamic courses in these two universities, and they are also some of them involved directly with de-radicalism and some who are not, but they're just teaching Islamic courses. So we will share the methods and also we will share the findings and the discussion as well in this presentation. So the first one that we found is related to the status of radicalism and extremism among students in these two universities. And we found that basically we can conclude that the status of radicalism and extremism is not high in these two universities because, for example, according to Informant 2, he explained in detail there are several stages of radicalism and extremism, and we found that basically our students in these two universities are not in cannot be yet categorized in the worst stage. So that's in terms of our findings, in terms of status of our students, in terms of radicalism and extremism. And for there are some cases, of course, that we have read in the media. I think all of you would agree that there have been some cases among lecturers as well in Malaysia, although not from these two universities, for example, but we have cases before, and also we have students who also involved. So we studied as well the reasons of participating in such activities, radicalism and extremism. For example, taken from Informant 1, the reasons, according to Informant 1, can be divided into external and internal factors. The external factors may include politics, economic, social, and other factors. Meanwhile, he also asserts that internal factors can also be prevailing. It is dominant because someone commits crimes following what he believes in himself. He believes that he's doing, of course, a correct thing. If it's a bad thing, then he will not do it. So it's the same reason why people can join and participate in radicalism and extremism activities. The crimes including cursing and nullifying one's religion and justifying people's blood as halal, blaming and cursing the government and Muslim leaders, declaring jihad to the non-Muslims and Muslims alike, and seeking false martyrdom and build an Islamic state, for example. And specifically on teaching and learning strategies to increase awareness and understanding among students about radicalism and extremism. From this particular research, we find that, and we also maybe can conclude that there is no specific teaching and learning strategies to inculcate awareness and also to make students avoid joining any activities related to radicalism and extremism. Besides that, the second one is the findings also suggest that there are two types of lecturers that we can categorize, and this influences the way awareness about radicalism and extremism is delivered in class. The first one is a group of lecturers who directly involved in de-radicalism, and secondly, who do not involve, but they teach courses that may be related to radicalism and extremism, uh, or may not be related, but they teach Islamic courses. So lecturers who involve in de-radicalism, we found that they involve a lot of interpersonal communication skills or initiate interpersonal approach in class to open up students to talk about radicalism and extremism. We found that it is from there that students are able to understand and engage with the message of not to join radicalism, don't be extreme, and relate with their past experiences. So what this suggests is messages are shared at a mass level, which is in class, and each student then process the messages and receive it at a more individual level. On the other hand, lecturers who do not involve in de-radicalism, for example, they use the strength of interpersonal communication such as consultations and small group discussions to make students talk about and be more open towards discussing radicalism and extremism. So this is they suggest that the way messages about radicalism and extremism is shared at individual level, then only it can move to a different level, for example, in a larger class discussions. Besides that, so basically we found that the easiest or the way to conclude this is to say that there is not yet any specific teaching and learning strategies in class that we can apply, but of course there are methods to go about. And then in addition, informant 4 also added that he highlights that some aspects of Aqidah must be explained in class in detail. Yeah, so this is the explanation from informant 4 that we can share. So for more details, you can refer also to the full paper that we submit for this conference as well. For example, he said that teaching Fardhu Ain and Fardhu Kifayah will open up students' minds to understand the exact context of Islam, to avoid themselves to be radical or extreme. Okay, and then I will also share what have been said or the views from lecturers who involved in the radicalism about what they teach and how they share these messages of de-radicalism in class, and also lecturers who do not involve in radicalism. So I stop sharing for a while. Okay, so for lecturers who involve in de-radicalism, Informant 2, for example, Informant 2 shared how he handled classes and how discussions, and by basically he did it by including real life stories that help his students to understand radicalism and extremism. Real stories are shared in class in an informal approach of communication. So, for example, he said that sharing real life stories make the discussion in the classroom interesting, and students will learn a lot actually from that discussion. The intention for the informant is to share what he does, especially on the students' vulnerability to recruitment. And then the informant 2 also always tell the students that in most cases, the students always become the victim of recruitment for the extremist group. And he will give a lot of examples as well for the students so they can link with their past experiences. And also to understand further and more in depth about the issue of radicalism and extremism. And in some cases, he also suggests the students to, if there are any students detected to involve in radicalism and extremism, he would suggest that students to meet him personally to discuss more about this issue. And these findings actually suggest that lecturers play an important role to understand about or to create awareness about radicalism and share it with the students for their understanding and also to avoid students from joining such activities. And such more flexible approach to teaching and learning is found very useful to engage students with the topics discussed in class and to be more open about discussing radicalism and extremism with an open mind. Of course, when we're talking about radicalism and extremism, it is not really something that people just want to talk about. It is like, of course, people would reserve something. They would not simply discuss it, and sometimes they don't even know that they have a tendency to go for such activities. So, the role of lecturers is really important here. To make teaching and learning in class as one of the ways as well to detect such activities. So the findings also suggest in this study that messages are sent in a form of a mass form to a group of students for lecturers who have experience and involved directly in de-radicalism, and some methods in teaching and learning are used to ensure the sharing in class is interesting and engaging so that they can make the students speak up about this issue. And then secondly, how about lecturers who do not involve directly in de-radicalism process or de-radicalism itself? Lecturers who do not involve in de-radicalism approach students in a more interpersonal way, where actually they base on consultation and small group discussions. So we found that it is from here that they hope that the students will engage more with the topics and also create awareness and understanding among them, the students. So the effect of such process is inferred to be in two folds. One is students share the message with other students, and secondly, students talk and discuss about radicalism and extremism more openly with the lecturers. The effects can both be at interpersonal and also at a larger group of communication levels. So, for example, in this case, Informant 5 admitted it is so important to have good interpersonal communication skills with the students in inculcating awareness and understanding about radicalism and extremism among students. He also shared his experience where he said many students are not really open to share about radicalism and extremism, and even some do not realize, that's what I said just now, that they don't realize that they have the potential to involve in such activities. Hence, he ensures open academic discussions with some interpersonal engagement and interpersonal communication with the students are important to ensure openness among students to understand and to share their thoughts about these issues. Consultation with the lecturers is crucial, thus readiness of the lecturers in this topic and engaging themselves in discussing such topics is equally pertinent as well. So, to conclude from the findings, we can infer that there is no specific teaching method applied by lecturers to increase awareness and understanding about radicalism and extremism in class. However, there is a major difference in terms of the approach taken by lecturers who involve directly in the radicalism and with lecturers who don't. Lecturers who involve, for example, in de-radicalism seems to approach the students with a more kind of mass approach rather than lecturers who do not, who approach more in a interpersonal communication approach. So, in conclusion, the study concludes that the status of radicalism and extremism among university students in Malaysia, particularly in these two universities, USIM and IIUM, it is not worrying. Hence, it can be because of that there is no specific teaching method applied in class to share messages related to radicalism and extremism. However, we have to also be careful at the same time that we cannot be complacent and take for granted about the involvement of our students from any universities, not only these two universities, that relates with radicalism and extremism, because there is a saying in Malay language, api dalam sekam, which means that the fire is burning, so with will be visible flames and warn of danger as so as not to be approached. However, if the warmth is hidden, then it is like an invisible threat, which is actually can be more dangerous. It is like crimes committed in secret. Therefore, it is important for universities to be proactive as well in handling radicalism and extremism before it burned the future of the students who are manipulated by the extremists. So, universities and schools have strategic positions and unique functions in countering and preventing violent extremism in society. According to scholar Ahmad Al-Muhammadi, uh, educational institutions, primarily universities, colleges, and schools, have a lot uh, to improve on in order to function as the third force in countering and preventing violent extremism in Malaysia. So that's it. That's our presentation for today. So if you have any questions or any suggestions to this, yeah, we open and we welcome emails and also messages from all. Thank you so much for joining us today. So we hope you learn something, and we also learn a lot from this research, and we hope that we can together build a harmonious nation, both in Malaysia and also in Indonesia and all over parts of the world. Thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi. Salam sejahtera.